I dropped out when I was 13, just because of really poor behaviour and poor results, and my mum pulled me out when I was in year 8. That was just a defined thing after just years of just trouble, of being pulled out of lessons, of just not having a good level for authority, of just not being able to be succeed in any schoolwork, and that led me to being pulled out and do homeschooling. I did go to college. I went to New College in Telford to do music because I had an interest in doing music, but again, that wasn't because of an academic result or needing to get anything from that. It was because it was something to do, but that was not my interest in life. I just kind of, in my teen years, just kind of ebbed between certain things. I worked with an agency, a digital agency, in the interim. I kind of left doing my freelance work, went to work full-time with a digital agency. Again, I think it kind of was almost replicating a little bit of the school era. I didn't really get on with the whole process of doing it. I thought the value that was being produced was not in line with how I would define a return on investment or how it would be results orientated, and decided that I didn't really enjoy working with an agency in that way, because it felt that it was more to do with really earning money for that agency rather than providing value for clients, value for businesses. And obviously in business, that's your core goal, but I've always felt that there is a more holistic way to achieve that. And that's kind of how what we've done now is been able to work with clients, work closely with them, get that return on investment, show value, and then be able to show that more longer term results. And that was a good I got fired from there after about 3 weeks, after kind of arguing a whole point of why I didn't think that when they're asking me to provide value to a client, their actual request was get them to spend more money, which in turn made the agency more money. And I just said to them, well, you're asking me to provide value, I want to do this. That didn't work, and I got fired the next day after about 3 weeks of working with them. So very kind of flustered by it, very sort of downhearted, very annoyed by that whole process. And I've noticed since then as well, working with third-party agencies, how similar so many of them are, that they have that mindset of, let's get them to spend more, let's get them to invest into advertising, then we can take more money. And it's become, in part, a bit of a cowboy industry in some ways. I ended up kind of thinking, right, I'm gonna have to grow up a little bit and get like a proper job, like a full-time job. I was good at e-commerce. I knew quite a lot about at the time with marketplaces and websites, and I managed to get a job as an e-commerce manager for a company in Hortonwood in Telford. That was really good. Learned a lot about the actual more logistics and fulfillment processes and the things that are quite important that, again, I think a lot of people in my industry don't know about, because they may have gone straight into going, I'm going to become an agency, I know digital marketing, I'll do that. But this really helped me get the actual physical understanding of products and how couriers work and how you have to negotiate your rates to, especially around Christmas when a van turns up and you need a 7.5 ton truck. And that was a good, learning there. And then again, moving to another business in Telford with a much larger marketplace volume business. They were a massive eBay business. So I had a lot of experience again being able to develop onto that point. Until that one, I started going, I could do this myself. I knew that I'd done freelance work. I knew I was able to sell myself. Managed to speak to a few, freelance, gone to a few freelance websites, started working with a few small businesses, and just started the ball rolling from there. It was probably the hardest part of my professional life. It was tough because having to work full time, leaving home about 7:30, going to the office for about 8:30, being there till 5, doing a full-time job, trying to manage a couple of people as well. Then coming back from there, I'd go to Starbucks at Battlefield after leaving work, come off the A5, be there at 5:30, and then be in there till they closed shop at 8 o'clock at night. They'd put the chairs up around me while I was still working to basically say, can you do one now. But that's kind of what I need. I need that kind of refresh. It was almost like my own mini office. But that was a really tough time, because at the same time I'd take my lunch break in my car. I'd be taking like sales calls in my car. I'd be taking holidays off, and I'd be going to see clients. And before COVID, this was going to travel one day on the train to Glasgow at 5:30 in the morning. And then the following week I'd be in Hastings to see another client, because I had no testimonials, I had no real sort of social proof. No one knew who I was, and I had to really make that statement and be able to go and see businesses and that, and that was really, really, really tough, because you're just constantly in a state of going, if I'm all in with this, I'm going to have to really go for it full board. And that was what made it really tough. And I'd be doing that, and at the same time I'd be kind of working with this business full time that I was doing, and finding that they were quite understaffed. I was doing a lot of like picking products in warehouse. I'm going fine with a trolley, and I'm doing this, but I'm working with a business that's making like 3 million quid a year on Amazon. I'm handling all this stuff, and I'm going, this is not me. This is not what I should be doing. But that was really tough. I remember going through this phase, and I can describe it as a work hangover, where I'd literally get up in the morning and you felt like you were hungover, because I was just so obviously worn out and exhausted. And we talk about work-life balance things all the time, but when you start a business, there isn't much of that, I don't think. I don't know many people that really can safely say that works if you really want to get started, unless you've got some sort of magic formula, you've got all the money in the world to be able to start doing that process. I think most people will have to really go over and above to be able to get that ball rolling. I think what happened is I had bits and pieces of success with it, and then other times you go, how am I going to do this? It was more a case of saying, how am I going to be able to make this work, rather than saying, this isn't going to work, this is negative. And I used to get the occasional sort of little sales inquiry, and I go, no, do you know what? People want this, people need this thing. And what I've always tried to do is almost look at it almost a bit like a game. You've got to kind of think in your mind like a game and say, I keep getting, if you're playing a game, like a really hard game, I'm doing this, but I keep getting killed, but it's obviously not impossible. And I constantly reference I don't know if you're much of a gamer, but I constantly mention the Souls games, like Demon Souls, Bloodborne, all those, where they are known for being relentlessly difficult. You get killed. I've been on that game. I have been killed 50 times in a row. And then you go back and you do it on the 51st time. But what happens with most people when they start a business or an idea is they go, I can't do this. And then they quit. And the reality is the enjoyment, almost in a rather kind of masochistic way, is the fact that you've got to be able to go, that was brilliant, that was really hard. How do I change that idea and start again? You can't do, they always say that, the first of madness is to do the same thing over and over again. And that's not the point. It's kind of a case of saying, do the same thing, but modify it slightly. And I think that's the same when you start looking at things like doing sales, or trying to find a way to market your website, or trying to get your name out there, or you have a sales call and go, well, okay, that went wrong. How do I modify that? And you're constantly tweaking and pivoting this idea for it to work. And I had that in my mind, knowing that it was going to be really tough, because otherwise they were saying that everyone would do it if it was easy. And that's the kind of more of a mentality thing you've got to get over. It started off again with different sort of things. Again, we're constantly trying to play with this product, and worked on the idea of really getting bad feedback in a way, because you know that when you start launching a product, I think a lot of people again think, I've got this business now, it's going to be perfect. And the reality is, it's your business. I think when you first start a business, it's actually terrible in a way, because it's not been tested. Unless you've spent all this, millions on like R&D, research and development, or you've got an idea for something that you know is going to work, you almost have to keep fiddling and playing with that product until it works and it's right. And we knew that when we started, we were going to have a lot of problems. So we'd go and get feedback from, I went up to see a really big brand in Manchester, and they'd taken this guy on who thought he was amazing at Amazon, and I went up there and we had this meeting, and he basically just ripped me apart and said, you haven't done advertising, you haven't done this, you haven't done that. And I was so annoyed. I thought, we're going to lose this customer. This guy's come in, thinks he knows everything, I was really peed off with it. Got back in the taxi, and I went, he was absolutely right. He was absolutely right. We really messed this up. But it was only really from getting some really stuck-up guy, some youngster who really thinks he knows his marbles. And I went, actually, you've got to swallow your pride a little bit and go, we should have done that. We should have established why we're not doing this, and constantly trying to pivot and modify that process. So it definitely wasn't plain sailing. We still managed to acquire customers, modify things based on that bad feedback, but we still managed to be able to progress and grow in a very gradual way. I mean, we only managed to take on a new member of staff about 6 months later. it wasn't a case of saying, here we are, oh wow, it's working, let's take on loads of staff. It was still quite slow, and it has been. I mean, we've got a team of 11 now, but it's still quite a slow process. We're always making sure that we've got that right traction and we're doing everything correctly. And that sort of development's taken a lot of time. It's taken 4 years, and we've still modified the product. We're still doing it now. Our product is very different than what it was when we first started, because we've used from bad feedback and people saying this is good, this is bad. We've gone, how do we make this easier? What do we do differently that we see our competitors do? All that kind of stuff. We see it every day. I suppose it's the same as when you look at when you see a child and you see the child every day and you go, oh, it's still the same person. But then if you see a photo of that child from 2 or 3 years ago, you go, wow, they've grown up. And I think it's the same with Amazon. When I first started, it was so basic. There was no real competition or anything like that. Now it's so complicated. It's so wide-ranging in terms of how it supports businesses and small businesses and brands. It's become a really quite complicated and evolving thing. We've always had to stay on top of that. And I think because we do every day, it doesn't feel like it's changing that much. But yeah, I mean, even probably since we started, the processes have changed. I mean, obviously we've had Brexit, which has made a big impact on imports and exports, and costs and everything like that have all changed. So there's other things as well, sort of geopolitically or whatever, that have also occurred in the e-commerce market. But Amazon itself probably has evolved quite a bit, and we've always had to be quite adaptive at making sure we're at the forefront for the sake of the clients and the brands we represent. We have about 55 clients at the moment. I say about 55 because I'm never 100% sure, because there's always new people coming on board, and we certainly have different brands that we occasionally work with, some that it doesn't always work with. We're very rigid in our approach, so sometimes we'll take on a new client, then 2 weeks later we'll go, these guys are not going to work with us because their communication is poor, or they've given us product samples and they're really bad. So it's about 55 clients we've got at the moment. We know what works. We know consistently the same things that has made a client successful. Now we've done it that many times. I mean, I've worked with 160, 170 different businesses over the last sort of 12 years in terms of Amazon. I know, and we as a team know what's working, and the key thing is communication. And again, it's a central core of what our business is. A business with bad communication with us, because it's 50-50. I think a lot of people think with our business there is it's a 50-50 approach, isn't it? You've got to have that input from that customer, whether it's we need things like certification from them, imagery, or whatever we've agreed. But communication in general is so important. If we have a client and we say, right, here's our onboarding plan, this is what we need from you to get this ball rolling, and then we don't hear from them, we go, this ain't going to work. And we'll tell them and say, we know this ain't going to work, because from day one, this is already there. So we can just turn and say, look, this might not be the best fit for yourselves or us. 13.5 million people who are Prime customers, who pay their subscription every year, are going to start their shopping experience on Amazon, and they do. It's like 95% of those people start there. So if your brand is not there, yet your competitor's brand is on there, who are they more likely to go to? And that's the same for, whether you're selling, boiled rice or basketballs. Those people who buy will start their shopping journey there. And it doesn't matter if you've got your own website, you're on eBay, or whatever, that's the core of those people. And that's why it's vitally important for any European or US business that's on e-commerce to be involved in Amazon. People, I think, tend to think it's quite easy to get on there, and they say, we'll just throw our content on there, our listings on there, and it'll be fine. And I think that's a huge mistake, because people will go, 10, 15 years ago, you could make a listing on Amazon, people would find it. But now you have such increased competition. People's mindsets mean that their attention to things is much slower, much faster now. You can say that, they say that content takes about 8 seconds now for it to actually be seen in the mind of someone to take action. So there's all those kind of things that have changed within the industry and within people in general that now mean that they'll take faster action, and therefore you need to do more to get your brand's profile across. You can't just have a good listing. You have to have very good advertising. Advertising is a key part of it. You have to have great product quality. You have to keep in stock. You have to make sure your account is being kept in good standing. You have to make sure that your customer service, because our customer service is Amazon's core, you have to make sure that your customer service to the customer is pivotal. Otherwise, any one of those things you miss will result in you effectively losing out on your Amazon account, your sales, your brand presence.